This is the Parc des Princes, Arsenal, around about 15 minutes ago as it calms down here. Arsenal went out of the Champions League, beaten in the semi-final stage. They lost here 2-1 tonight, 3-1 on aggregate, and it's another nearly season for Mikel Arteta. Arsenal fan and former England striker Darren has been with us for talkSPORT tonight, commentator Jim Proudfoot as well. This is the debrief on an Arsenal exit from the Champions League. Darren Ben, first of all, how are you feeling as a Gooner?
Yeah, I'm all right, obviously disappointed. It was the hope that kills you. As I say, it's the hope that kills you. 1-0, you get over here, they started off the game really, really well, but when you don't score in those periods, I know it's cliche, but when you play at the top level, certainly the Champions League semi-final, if you don't score in that period where you're on top, you're always given an opportunity to the opposition. They took their chances, and in the end, over 2 legs, you'd probably say the better side went through.
Got to say that Jim Proudfoot on commentary, as ever, brilliant. Gave us some superb stats. The XG said that Arsenal were arguably the better side. So, Jim Proudfoot, is that true? Were Arsenal actually the better side here tonight?
Well, they had a fantastic first 15 minutes, but in the second half, their XG in the second half alone was 2.5. Now, they scored 1. Saka missed a great chance. He then had another effort which was brilliantly saved by Donnarumma. So that's how the 2.5 is getting stacked up pretty quickly with big moments like that. I don't think that they were the better side over 90 minutes. I don't think you can necessarily say that they deserved to lose tonight. I think that PSG were the better side over the 2 legs. I don't think it was a bad Arsenal performance by any stretch of the imagination tonight, and I think that they deserve plenty of credit actually for the opening 20 minutes. I thought they were really, really good, but when things didn't fall their way, when they were on top and in control, then you sense that it might end up being a bad night for them. There was one crucial save from Donnarumma inside the opening 6 or 7 minutes to deny Ødegaard. I think that was probably the key moment of the whole night.
It was a sensational save, low down to his left. He had no real right to get it, Donnarumma. Absolutely brilliant. That's why he was Benty's man of the match. I think, listen, PSG had a penalty. It was a highly dubious penalty, a very harsh penalty, I have to say. They also did score 2 goals as well, so let's bear that in mind. And actually, the goals that they scored, Darren, you could look at Arsenal's defending and errors that they made in the build-up to both of the goals, and they're down to Arsenal making simple mistakes at the back, aren't they?
Yeah, again, the first one, Declan Rice giving the free kick away, Partey's clearance, and then Martinelli obviously defending like an attacker, where he's almost trying to break away, but then thinking, oh no, more responsibility is Fabian Ruiz, and it's a fantastic finish. But then Thomas Partey, that crucial period of that second half, where you're thinking, right, don't try and overcomplicate it, just clear it, everyone goes up the pitch, and then you move on to the next phase. He overthinks it, lapses in concentration, but take nothing away from the finish. Hakimi's a fullback, but he just takes one touch out his feet and just uses the defender and just bends it around Saliba into that far corner. And when that second one hit the goal, hit the net, it was game over. It was always going to be game over, and it just came in a period where I thought Arsenal could get themselves back into it. And again, when you play at top level, you get punished by these type of mistakes, and when you give the ball away on the edge of your own box, what do you think is going to happen?
Arsenal have been all about set pieces this season, haven't they? Set piece FC, they call them. And the big set piece that Arteta brought out tonight was Thomas Partey's long throw, and it did some damage, you have to say. I get the feeling, Jim Proudfoot, that Arteta might be criticised in some quarters for, again, relying on set pieces, and actually his big set piece was a Tony Pulis idea from about 25 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I won't necessarily subscribe to that. I think if you've got a player that has got a half-decent long throw on him, and those long throws got worse as the night went on, but they were quite effective when they started. The first 5 dozen in the opening 20 minutes were pretty good, but they, towards the end, it might as well not have bothered. I think if you've got that, I don't understand why you wouldn't use it. They're not playing for it, not playing percentage football to win throws in advanced areas. They're just making the most of situations when they arrive. You could almost say it would be negligent if they got a long throw that could be effective if they don't use it. So I don't think that is a stick you can beat Mikel Arteta with. I think he probably will be beaten with it, but I don't think it is a stick that you necessarily can beat him with.
So it's funny because Jim said that his first couple were dropping just under the crossbar. I thought, okay, by the end of the game, they just about reached the 18-yard box. So I was thinking, throw it, set, and then cross it. But I mean, I agree with Jim. I think if you're, I mean, I don't want to use Stoke because obviously they'll beat Arsenal with the Stoke tradition, but it is a weapon. If you can get the delivery right into the box, and you've got the likes of Moreno, Saliba, these guys that are willing to head it, then it's probably more effective if Gabriel's there, because he's got that hunger and desire to want to go and head it. But if you're competent with doing it, I would keep using it.
There was one moment just before half-time where Bukayo Saka, who I thought was excellent first half in particular, I would say he's one of my favourite players. I love him, but he's got to stay on his feet more often. That would be an observation, let's put it that way. At the end of the first half, he's done well to get a low ball across, and it was so clear that Arsenal needed a predator, a fox in the box, a number 9, whatever. And Darren, I think you felt the same way when we discussed it at half-time. It's so clear and obvious that that's what Arsenal need to do in this summer window.
Well, as I said, that's what you call freebies. As a centre forward, that is a free hit, because you haven't got to think about it. You get yourself into position, it comes across, you tap it in the empty net. But the problem is you know what Saka's like, you know how good he is at going past the fullback. It's the fact that the lack of anticipation, because in those scenarios, it doesn't have to be a perfect cross. He's just putting it into an area, and you've got to think to yourself, do you know what? If I get into that 6-yard box, 9 times out of 10, it might not come. But there's going to be that one time, if you get there often enough, it's going to come across there. And the fact that Moreno's not there, Martinelli's not there, and even Declan Rice and even Odegaard, these attacking, forward-thinking players, one of you has got to make that run, because by you all standing outside the 6-yard box, you're not affecting anything. It's an easy clearance for the goalkeeper or the defenders. So in that scenario there, Saka was well within his rights to kind of have a go at the rest of the team by saying, I've done my part, you guys have got to step up and put it in the net. And too many times today that happened, and there was no one in there to put it in the net.
I want to ask you both about Mikel Arteta, who it's another nearly season for Arsenal. You can't say it's been a bad season, because you could say there's improvement, because they're in the final 4 of the Champions League. They're, you could say, as good as Barcelona, if you like. They're beaten semi-finalists. So there's a way of spinning it where actually there's improvement. There's a way of spinning it that says it's another failure. It's somewhere in between. But is this good enough under Mikel Arteta? Jim, first of all.
Well, I think you have to look at the positives to start with. So it's the first Champions League semi-final since 2009. And they had a long spell where they couldn't even get into the Champions League. So you've got to take that into account. You have to look at the growth that Arsenal have had over 4 or 5 years. We're now complaining about them losing a Champions League semi-final, as opposed to, losing a Europa League round of 16 tie, quarter-final tie, whatever. Even when they were getting to the Champions League every year, they had that spate of round of 16 defeats. So you've got to look at the long-term curve is certainly on the up. The downside, though, is that they've now been beaten in the semi-finals, the last 4 semi-finals they played in major cup tournaments, 2 League Cups, 2 European semi-finals in there. They could get 76 points in the league this season if they win the 3 games they've got left, but even 76 points has only been enough to finish second in 5 of the last 20 Premier League seasons. And I think that when you look at the context of Man City having almost an historically bad season under Pep, Manchester United and Spurs having their worst seasons in generations, Chelsea being below par, a lot of people would say, Liverpool have won the title. I don't think they're going to go down as, and no disrespect to anybody, but I don't think they're going to go down as vintage title winners. I don't think that people will look at this Liverpool team and say, that was one of the best we've ever seen. Now, next season's iteration of it might be, but I don't think this season's will be. I don't think it goes down as a vintage Premier League race, and Arsenal are going to finish a fair way short in that. They're not guaranteed second yet, and even if they get second, they're going to do so with a points total that is below what they would have expected at the beginning of the season. So it's been a season of moments. You've beaten Real Madrid at home, you've beaten Real Madrid away, and you got to a Champions League semi-final. But I think that has been not outweighed, but it is certainly balanced up by failure as well. And I think that if you asked Mikel whether this would be satisfactory for next season, I think he would say no. So on that basis, you've got to say that it hasn't been this time around either.
It almost feels like a defeat, even though it's not. And as Jim said there's so many positives, but it almost felt like for a while now that Arsenal put all their chips in the Champions League basket. That they knew the league was slipping away, so they focused. And I can understand it. We've seen a lot of teams do it when they've gone, do you know what? It's all about the Champions League. So then when you come up short in your last opportunity for silverware, you almost feels doubly disappointed, because you haven't given the league away, but you've watched the league drift away. You've got to a Champions League semi-final where a lot of people made you the favourites, even though you've never won it. And then to go out of it in the way that the manner in which you've gone out of it, it just feels a little bit like, have we come on to the end of the cycle? Now, I hope not, because I think Mikel Arteta's still got a lot to give. But at some point, the obvious Arsenal fans are going to say, we've finished second, maybe 3 times in a row. We might finish third this season. We've got to a Champions League semi-final, Champions League quarter-final. But if you look back at Mikel Arteta's time now, yes, he's had to clear out a lot of big players, Aubameyangs, the Ozils. He's won an FA Cup. For the amount of money that Arsenal have spent, are we where we should be when you spend that amount of money? And unfortunately for me, the answer is going to be no.
In terms of my view on it, what they said basically, but also what I will say is, I think next season is gigantic for Mikel Arteta. You know, there's no way I would say that they should get rid of him now, but he's got to do something big next season. Quick one on PSG and the final against Inter. PSG have had us out of our seats in this Champions League at times. How's the final going to go?
It's going to be fantastic because Inter Milan, we know how good they were when they got past Barca, but they just don't strike me as a typical Italian defensive-minded team, and the semi-final against Barcelona tells you that. I just got this feeling about PSG, just that young, hungry energy, the way that they can kind of go from attack to defence, defence to attack really quickly, that freedom that they play with. I just give them the edge over Inter Milan.
They've lost a few games in this Champions League run. Think back to the one against Liverpool here, where they were excellent and contrived to lose it. There was a spell against Manchester City, a game that they dominated and deserved to win, but there was a spell here against City where 15 minutes in the second half they were exposed twice. Villa, they were 5-1 up on aggregate, ended up hanging on to a 5-4 aggregate win. I think the blueprint is there now for sides to be able to get at them and beat them, and I think that Inter are a very well coached team, very clever team, I think might have the odds. Now, I fancy PSG all the way through, but as we were talking about immediately after the full-time whistle, I think it's a coin toss now. Having been pretty much pro PSG for a good few months, I'm not so sure now. I think that maybe the sense of occasion might potentially be a factor in the minds of some of the young Parisians. So we'll see how they go. I tell you one thing though, it's not going to be a bad game. It's going to be a quite tremendous campaign, and as we've said many times, we don't particularly like what we've had to surrender to get the Champions League in this format that it is, but this first season of the revamped Champions League has been tremendous. I don't like what we've had to sacrifice with FA Cup replays and this, that and the other to get here, but it is what it is, and I think that it has been an extraordinary Champions League campaign. Yeah,
it's been brilliant. I think the final will be brilliant as well. Echo what Jim said, we'll have commentary on talkSPORT, of course. And I've been going for Inter since the league stage. I'll stick with Inter, but boy, Paris can play some football as well. Jim, Darren, thank you very much.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.